What's up everyone, and welcome to another Minecraft Bedrock Redstone tutorial video. This time we're going to be talking about piston doors. My hope is that after this guide you'll be able to build your very own piston doors and understand how they work. We're also going to talk about alternate activations such as hidden redstone torch activations. But let me start off by giving a big shout out to Aggressive Dance for requesting the piston door videos. Thank you so much for leaving a comment. And to all of my subscribers, thank you so much. It is because of you that I can keep making these videos, so I really appreciate you watching. And even if you're not subscribed, I really appreciate you being here. Thank you again. I hope you enjoy this video as well, and if you do, please consider leaving a like and subscribing so that you can come back and continue our journey together. So let's start off by talking about how you activate the pistons. A single piece of dust on a solid block will power both the block and the piston it's attached to. You can also use a redstone torch next to the bottom piston with a solid block above the torch. The torch will power that block and the piston that it's next to. Using a torch will also default the door to be closed so that you can open it with a button or a pressure plate. The easiest hidden door is this piston corner door. Simply put two pistons next to the corner, poke a hole, and run the redstone behind the wall. You can run any input that you want to, but we'll talk more about that later on. You can use this same concept on a wall instead of a corner. It won't be hidden unless you design the wall to make it hidden, but we'll talk more about that in a minute. These are the most minimalistic designs that you can do. Just have a lever on the other side of that will open the door, and then a lever on the inside will close the door. Levers are by far the simplest way to activate a piston door, but they do have their limitations. So now let's talk about pressure plates and buttons. Pressure plates will send a signal to the block underneath the block that they're sitting on, so you will need a redstone torch to keep the door closed until the pressure plate turns it off. All button and pressure plate inputs will need a redstone torch to keep the door closed. Just have the redstone torch closing the pistons and then run the button or the pressure plate to the redstone torch. Buttons are really nice because you can kind of run them wherever you want to. You just have to run the button to the redstone torch that's closing the pistons. Glass is really helpful for running redstone in tight places because it doesn't pinch the redstone when going up or down. Now if you want to extend the duration of the button, that's really easy. Simply put a comparator extender down here like so, and it will extend the duration of the button. Now you can place a block coming out of one of the comparators to extend it even further, or you can just leave it like this, but the block makes it extend for a longer duration. So let me go press the button to show you how long it extends now. So if we press the button, it will stay open for longer than the button activates, which is really helpful if you run the buttons farther away. I find that placing the button above the doors is easier than placing it to the side, especially with these double piston doors. They can get kind of wide, so the button ends up being kind of far away. But these double piston doors are just as easy to build as the regular ones. Simply mirror the piston activation. Place like a pressure plate with some redstone or a button on top, and there you go. Now before I get into flush hidden doors, let's talk about how you hide these regular doors first. So you can always place decorations hiding your input lever or button so that people can't see it, or you can texture your walls or add multiple levers, multiple buttons so that people don't know if there's a hidden door there or which button opens it, or you can put a locking mechanism somewhere in between your input and your pistons, like this. So when the lever is on, you won't be able to activate your input, and when your hidden lever is off, it will unlock your door so that you can actually open it with your button or pressure plate. Now on to flush hidden doors. These are super exciting, but a little bit more complex. The nice thing about them is that they're flush with the walls so that people won't even know they're there, especially if you hide your input. The basic idea is that you have 4 pistons delayed with a repeater, pushing 2 pistons holding 2 blocks so that it ends up being flush. For this design, the input lever is back here behind this diamond block, but really your input can be anywhere before the repeaters. Now this repeater down here is the delayed one for the 4 pistons on this side over here. Now these 4 pistons right here need to have a repeater on max delay somewhere before them so that they don't try to pull the 2 middle pistons before they close. This delayed repeater can go anywhere down here as long as it's before those 4 pistons. The basic idea is that it will activate after the repeater going into these gold blocks. These blocks don't have to be gold, of course, they just signify where the inside pistons are receiving their power. But let's break it down even further so that we can understand a little bit better. So here we have the basic skeleton of the double wide flush piston door. So the 4 pistons that we need to activate with a repeater delay are signified by these blue blocks right here. They just need to be powered with a delayed repeater somewhere before them for them to work. Now the gold blocks signify the things that activate the middle pistons. And for the double wide design, you'll need to activate those middle pistons through the floor and ceiling, so that's why we have it set up like this. These bottom repeaters just activate this dust so that it points into the bottom 2 gold blocks. And then all 3 of those will just be tied together onto a single line. But before we do that, let's activate them all individually so we can actually see what's going on. So these will activate at a delay to push the 2 middle pistons inwards. Then these gold blocks will already be active when the 2 middle pistons arrive, so they will also turn on. And then since they activate before, without a delay, they will turn off first, like so, and then these will retract at a delay, pulling it all back. Now when tying these together, these pistons will need glass blocks on top of them so that the redstone dust doesn't activate them at the wrong times. Aside from that, nothing fancy. Now we just need to attach all 3 of these together. So we'll run some redstone dust down here, attach it to that line. Now run the top part to before the repeater. Don't run it directly to the blue blocks, just run it to before the repeater. We're going to use some glass right here so that it doesn't pinch the redstone, and so we don't have to run the redstone in a weird direction. Like so. Glass is really nice because it doesn't pinch redstone when going back upon itself like that. And now this side is done, so you can attach your input anywhere before the repeaters that you can find. In this case, all of this top and this bottom part is before that delayed repeater, so you can attach an input wherever you really want to. You can run it off in this direction, or you can place it down at the bottom, just anywhere before the repeaters. As long as your input's before the repeaters, you can place it wherever you want to. Also remember, if you want a button or a pressure plate instead of a lever, you'll need a redstone torch, basically where one of these levers is. That way, the redstone torch is the thing activating these pistons, and then your button or pressure plate is simply turning off that redstone torch. Now it's time to tie in the other side. Simply place 2 solid blocks next to the bottom pistons with redstone dust on top, then a repeater on max delay going into one of these blocks, and now we just need to simply tie this repeater into the rest of the machine. Just remember that when tying it all together, just tie in before the repeaters, and everything will be fine. So we can tie it in through the top, we can tie it in through the bottom. Just remember, if you tie it in from the top, to place glass on top of these pistons so they don't activate at the wrong times. Then we'll place solid blocks going down, going into this repeater. Then we'll place some dust to connect it all together, like so. Now this repeater down here can pull a signal out from that solid block because it has redstone dust on top, and it can push the signal into those blue blocks, so it should all work. So now again, your input can be anywhere before the repeaters that you can find. So you can do it on the top, you can do it down here on the bottom, just anywhere before the repeaters is totally fine. It should all work. Now if it doesn't, it's probably because the signal isn't strong enough. That's an easy fix. As long as you don't place the repeaters on top of the gold blocks, you can just place a repeater anywhere on here to refresh the signal to make sure that it's strong enough to reach all the redstone dust. Just avoid those gold blocks because you need those gold blocks to have dust on top. And there you go. I hope that all made sense. Let me know in the comments if it did or if it didn't. So let's look at it one more time. This is a slightly different build variation of the same thing. The main difference is that we powered the group of 4 pistons on this side by going under rather than over. There's a few other minor differences, but as you can see, it's basically the same. Really, the main difference is going to be how you tie all the systems together. You're still going to have the delayed repeaters going into these blue blocks to power the groups of 4. And you're still going to have the power on the top and bottom where the gold blocks are. Now just remember, if you want to run a button or a pressure plate, you're going to need a redstone torch somewhere on the top or somewhere under the bottom. That torch is going to act like one of these levers, so that torch is the thing actually powering the pistons. And then after you place the torch, you can just run a button or a pressure plate to that torch, which turns it off. You can always go up or down or out like this if you ever need room to place the torch, but just remember, if you end up going too far away, just place a repeater somewhere nearby to make sure the signal's strong enough to reach all of the redstone dust in this machine. And just play around with adding different inputs. You know, the more that you play around, the more that you'll learn. And speaking of playing around with different inputs, here we have another copy of the 2x2 flush door, except this one opens with a redstone torch rather than a lever or a button or a pressure plate. It's the same basic design, it all works the same, but if we go on this side, there is a redstone torch underneath this diamond block. This torch is actually keeping the door closed, so if we break the torch, the door will open. The way this works is that there's a repeater on the other side of this diamond block, which is receiving power from that torch, and it's acting like an input lever. So if we replace the torch, the door will close. If we break the torch, the door will open. Super cool. I really like redstone torch doors. And now to close it from the inside, you can just run a lever like you normally would to anywhere on the top or bottom line, and when you flick the lever on, it will close the door. Now if you leave while the lever is on, then you won't be able to open it using the redstone torch, and that's what this machine fixes. It's basically the same design as the other ones. You still have delayed repeaters going into the blue lines, you still have dust going into the gold blocks, but up here at the top, you have a T-flop going into the rest of the machine. Now, T-flop is basically an on-off switch. So on this side, if we break and replace this redstone torch, it will close the door, and if you break and replace the torch again, it will open the door. Now, the way this works is the torch on this side is sending signal into that diamond block, which turns on and off this torch right here, which when turned on will send a signal to this dispenser full of a bucket of water. When the water is dispensed, the door will be closed, but when the water is not dispensed, it will have a non-stackable item in there, so that comparator will see that it has a signal strength of 2 and turn on the machine. Now, one nice thing to this is that if you run a button to that dispenser, you can use the button to open the door, and the button will keep the door open and keep the door closed. That's the nice thing about having a T-flop connected to a button, is that it works kind of like a lever, except without the lever limitations. Now, even if I left through an alternate exit and I broke that torch, it would still open the door. But if I used a lever on the inside instead, it would lock the door from the outside if I left through an alternate exit, so I wouldn't be able to break the torch to reopen the door. And that's it for the 2 tall piston doors. For the 3 tall piston doors, here's a simple basic one that I'll leave you with, but in the next video, I will cover the 3 tall flush piston doors. They're a little bit more complicated because you have to have a piston extender and a few other weird things, but they're really cool. The 3x2 flush piston doors are really fun, really neat. I'll cover these in the next video. I'll try to do my best to break it down so that you understand how they work and be able to build your own. But that's all we got for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it to this point in the video, please leave a comment so that I can praise you for watching the whole thing. And as always, until next time, I've been your host, OmLedu, hopefully teaching you a redstone trick or two.